Welcome. It is Verdict with Senator Ted Cruz. We're in studio this week as well, so people that are listening, they can also watch this episode on YouTube or on Facebook, X, etc. This is going to be a fun show, one that people are going to want to share with their family and their friends, because we're going to talk about how just 6 months in to this presidency, the wins are incredible, even comparing it to 2016. This is moving at such an incredible pace for the president's agenda items. Having the Senate and the House on your side and working with you is amazing. And there's been some celebration on that, but the media is not covering much of the success.
Well, that's exactly right. And this is one of those episodes where the value of a podcast becomes clear, because the corporate media does not want the American people to know the size, the scope of President Trump's success. And so the only way you can get the information we're going to have in this podcast is listening to this podcast or other things similar, although I'm not sure there's a whole lot similar to listen to. But let's take what President Trump just put up on Truth Social. Wow, time flies. Today is the 6-month anniversary of my second term. Importantly, it's being hailed as one of the most consequential periods of any president. In other words, we got a lot of good and great things done, including ending numerous wars of countries not related to us, other than through trade and or, in certain cases, friendship. 6 months is not a long time to have totally revived a major country. Quote, 1 year ago, our country was dead with almost no hope of revival. Today, the USA is the, quote, hottest and most respected country anywhere in the world. Happy anniversary.
I love it.
I got to say, that is not hyperbole.
Yeah.
The 6 months that we have seen in 2025 under President Trump's second term, I believe have been the most consequential 6 months of any president of our lifetime. We are going to break down the victories, the major victories, right now.
Yeah. Want to talk to you real quick, though, about a bill that you've got every month and a change you can make and support the causes that you believe in at the very same time. And that's Patriot Mobile. Look, there's a lot of choices for cell phone service, but there's one that is really a big difference. And it's one where you can boldly stand in the gap for every American that believes in freedom and that it's worth fighting for. And that is a company called Patriot Mobile. Now, switching to Patriot Mobile today is easier than ever, and I'm going to give you a free month of service. But let me explain to you about what you get. If you're worried about coverage, you shouldn't be. Patriot Mobile uses all 3 major U.S. networks, and that means that you're going to have premium service wherever you are. Now, if you think switching is a hassle and that's why you haven't made the switch, it's not anymore in 2025. You can keep your same number, keep your same phone, or upgrade to a new one. And Patriot Mobile has a 100% U.S.-based team that will get you activated literally in minutes from the comfort of your home or your office. Now, if you've got a small business and multiple lines or family with a lot of phones, not a problem. If you're stuck in a contract or owe money on your phones, no worries, because Patriot Mobile right now has a contract buyout program. This is how we win, folks, by aligning our spending with our values. And about 5% of your bill every month with Patriot Mobile, they put back to work to stand up for your First and your Second Amendment rights, the rights of unborn children, and to stand with our wounded warriors and our veterans. That is just some of the great things they do every month. So make the switch. It's never been easier. Now, let me give you that free month of service. Go to patriotmobile.com/verdict, patriotmobile.com/verdict, or 972-PATRIOT. Use that promo code verdict. You'll get a 1 month of free service switching today. patriotmobile.com/verdict or 972-PATRIOT. So, Senator, you guys got to have actually a celebratory dinner at the White House. Not a bad place to hang out. The president decided, let's celebrate the accomplishments of the big, beautiful bill. I actually think this speaks to him understanding politics so much more now than he did in 2016.
Oh, yeah.
When you win, celebrate with your team. There does seem to be a team mentality with this president now in Congress. I don't know if we had that in 2016. That's paying dividends, and you guys got together for a dinner to celebrate the hard work.
So it was a fantastic celebration dinner. It was Friday night. The president invited Republican senators to come join us. About 30 Republican senators came with our spouses. So Heidi was there. And it was great fun. We were celebrating the victories of the first 6 months, but in particular, the one big, beautiful bill. And I'll tell you, you can see some of the images from that night. Heidi and I were with the president. He was in as good a mood as I have ever seen him. He was jubilant. Look, we were celebrating. We were celebrating that night. We were feeling fantastic. It turns out winning is a good thing. I'm not tired of winning yet.
Yeah.
And none of the rest of us are either. And it was the entire atmosphere. The president said, but the rest of us agreed with what he said in that truth. These have been the most consequential 6 months of any president of our lifetime. And also, we have seen the most conservative victories in any 6 months period in our lifetime. And I want in this podcast, I want to highlight 5 of those victories. But the 5th one is the one big, beautiful bill. And one of the things we're going to do in this podcast is we're going to break down some of the major elements of that one big, beautiful bill because the press has demonized it.
Yeah.
And it is extraordinary how many wins were in the one big, beautiful bill. But if you're looking at President Trump's first 6 months, the number one victory is obvious, and it has to be the border. Because
no doubt.
This election was a referendum on Joe Biden and the Democrats' open borders, on 4 years of 12 million illegals flooding into this country. The American people said enough is enough, and the results President Trump has produced are utterly unprecedented. And by the way, if you don't want to believe Ben, well, that's usually a good instinct. Even if you don't want to believe me, believe ABC News, and God help me that I just uttered that sentence, but give a listen to what ABC News says about what President Trump has accomplished on the border.
Today marks 6 months since President Trump returned to office for his second term. It has been a head-spinning half year, from sweeping changes in the federal government to mass deportations and bombs dropped on Iran. The president promised changes, and there is no question he has made them. President Trump won the 2024 election based largely on his vow to improve the economy and crack down on illegal immigration. He has declared success on both.
I mean, that's coming from ABC News. It was also interesting this week. I was up in New York for a couple of days, and I love green room conversations because you're hanging out with usually someone from the opposite party, and I won't say their name. It was a Democrat operative high up in the Democratic Party, and what was said to me was, you guys screwed up. Y'all secured the border too quick. I would have slow played it longer to get more of a victory lap out of it because it was shut down so fast. They said to me, they're like, we can't believe how fast you guys had the success of closing the southern border, and they said politically you should have played it out a little longer.
You know what? That doesn't shock me a Democrat says that because to Democrats, everything is political.
Yeah.
It's all about political battles. Never mind what that Democrat is saying. You should have let more Americans be murdered for longer. You should have let more women be raped by illegals for longer. You should have let more children be brutalized by child molesters. I mean, what a revealing comment.
Yeah.
And I got to say, I disagree, even as just a matter of political strategy, with whatever that unnamed strategist named David Axelrod said. But, and here's why I disagree, because the fact that it was done so quickly demonstrates for all times that what the Democrats did was deliberate.
Yep.
That they could have fixed it at any time, and they didn't because they wanted the border open, and they were perfectly fine. Everyone who died the last 4 years, every single Democrat said, hey, if it benefits me politically, I will let your family die. That level of cynicism, I think it's very hard to come back from. And even now they're telling you, gosh, you should let more people die because you'd get some political advantage from it. That's just wrong.
It's also interesting in the conversation that we had, and I think this is a bigger point the American people need to understand about the win and how big of a deal this is. They were even talking about how flooding the border and illegal immigrants really helped shape the map for Democrats. We were able to give them more votes in Congress because of population, and we were counting illegal immigrants as a part of the population. They were saying that's one of the things that, because the border was open, I mean, this was an open conversation.
They were completely open about it. But in terms of the successes on this, let's go back to ABC News, because again, and what's very funny is you can tell Martha hates this. She's miserable. In that last segment we played, she describes it as head spinning. I got to say, I am glad the corporate media's heads are spinning. I want them to spin a whole lot more. But listen to ABC describing the president's success on securing the border.
You will hit the border with Mexico, where there is little question that Trump is fulfilling a campaign promise.
All illegal entry will immediately be halted.
In a matter of months, migrant crossings have hit record lows. Apprehensions at the southern border dropped to 6,072 in the month of June, a massive reduction from the 83,532 apprehensions recorded in June of last year.
Over 25 miles of concertina wire our U.S. Marines put up for us.
Acting Patrol Chief Jeffrey Stallnacher tells us the San Diego sector has seen a significant drop in illegal entries.
And what that has done, it's allowed us to get our agents back on the border to do their traditional work. In addition to that, we have maximized consequences. It can be an immigration consequence or a consequence because of a criminal history, something that they've done in the past.
So in other words, if they come across, you find out they have criminal history, they go to jail and probably be kicked out later. Or if they don't, they're just immediately repatriated.
So criminal history and immigration.
You go back to one thing he said there. He said, we've been able to now get our officers to be able to go back to the border and do their job. One of the things that happened was there was so much taking care of all these legal immigrants that were coming across on purpose that you pulled them away from their jobs at the border, which allowed more people to come across the border and allowed the cycle to continue to grow.
The Border Patrol agents were processing, they were changing diapers, they were administering baby food. Look, one of the things we covered at a previous pod talking about the flooding in the Texas Hill Country, Texas DPS said, we were able to be here rescuing people from drowning.
Yeah.
Why? Because we're not on the southern border anymore, because finally the federal government is doing its job. So DPS was able to be in Texas saving Texans. And so that consequence is massive. All right, that's victory number one, the border. In the first 6 months, we have secured the border, and we're going to lock that in and make it permanent. Victory number two, President Trump won a war with Iran.
Yes.
Period. The end. Iran, the Ayatollah chanting death to America, death to Israel. Israel defeated Hamas. Israel defeated Hezbollah with our support.
Yep.
And Israel defeated Iran, took out their nuclear capabilities in one of the most amazing, successful military strikes of our lifetimes. And President Trump ordered a targeted bombing strike. B-2s flew all the way around the world, took out Iran's nuclear facilities, not a single U.S. casualty, utterly decimated and destroyed Iran's nuclear capability, secured the border, and won a war, and we're just 6 months into it.
Hold on. Democrats say he was going to start World War III if he did this. What happened to that narrative?
By Democrats, do you mean Tucker Carlson?
Yeah.
Let's be clear.
That's true. He did say that as well.
So let's be clear.
Yeah,
Tucker and others said, if Donald Trump bombs Iran, he said it will start World War III.
Yep.
He said thousands of Americans will die.
Yep.
And he said it's a world war that America will lose. So that was his prediction. Iran will beat us in World War III. Now, that wasn't just a teeny-weeny bit wrong.
Yeah.
It was totally 100% absolutely false. And all of the Democrats who agreed with Tucker Carlson, all of the AOCs and left-wing nuts who agreed with Tucker Carlson, all of the corporate media hacks who agreed with Tucker Carlson, all of them were wrong, and President Trump was right.
How much safer are we now that we actually not just took out their nuclear facilities and pushed them way back, but also I do think it also sends a very big message to other terrorists around the world and to other bad actors around the world. If you push America, we will defend ourselves under this administration.
The enemies of America are terrified of Donald Trump. That is a very good thing. Look, I believe in peace through strength. I want our commander-in-chief to be strong. Now, that doesn't mean that we engage in forever wars. Look, it's important to understand. Donald Trump didn't invade Iran. He didn't send boots on the ground. He's not trying to turn Iran into Switzerland. But what he did do is acted decisively to take out nuclear weapons being developed to potentially be used against the United States of America. That is a strong commander-in-chief. By the way, he is also acting to take out the Houthis who are bombing American ships and harassing American commerce. And the message to Iran, the message to North Korea, the message to Venezuela, the message to Cuba, the message to Russia, the message to China. If you are an enemy of America, you are dealing with a commander-in-chief who will stand up and defend America. And here's what the isolationists never understand. Weakness produces more military conflict. Because our enemies are afraid of President Trump, we are much, much less likely to go to war. I want our enemies afraid of the American president.
This, I think you said it's victory number 2. I think it's so understated by the media.
It's massive.
Just how big of a victory this was. And the fact that there was no loss of American lives and World War III wasn't started, and now the rest of the world's on notice.
That wasn't guaranteed. I mean, when President Trump gave that order, it could have gone very, very differently. Imagine if those B-2s had dropped a bunker buster and had missed its target and hit a civilian target instead, and there had been hundreds or thousands of casualties. That would have been a dramatically different event. Imagine if those American planes had been shot down. Remember, Jimmy Carter, when Iran took Americans hostage, he launched a military strike to try to get them down, and our helicopters crashed in the desert with no opposing fire. The entire dynamic would have been very different if we had lost American servicemen and women on that attack. Instead, it was delivered with incredible precision and total success. That's valuable not only for defeating Iran, but for every one of our enemies. And by the way, every one of our friends to sit back and say, holy cow, don't mess with them.
Don't mess with them.
All right.
Big victory number 2. What's 3?
Victory number 3. It's one that I care particularly about, the Take It Down Act. And I'll tell you, Friday at the White House, the president brought the Take It Down Act as one of the major victories of his first 6 months. He brought up Melania Trump.
Yeah, she was all involved in this.
She leaned in hard. I wrote the Take It Down Act. It is the first bill in years restricting big tech. It is protecting children, women, and teenage girls from non-consensual intimate imagery, either real intimate images or deepfakes made using AI. We passed it through the Senate. We passed it through the House. We had a great bill signing on the South Lawn. And in fact, when you walk into the White House, and you can see this is framed. This is the first picture that's framed as you come into the White House. I'm standing directly behind the president. And this is the signing of the Take It Down Act. And what was interesting is after President Trump signed it, he handed it to the First Lady. And he said, here, Melania, you want to sign it. And so the picture is actually of her signing it. Remember, we talked on this podcast. I'm willing to bet, I'm virtually certain, this is the first and only law in American history that's been signed by the First Lady. And so the bill has 2 signatures, Donald Trump and then Melania Trump under it. And one of the questions you asked is, you said, well, does that create a legal problem that Melania signed it? It's like, no, once the president signs it, Mickey Mouse can sign it. It doesn't undo it. But it's still very cool that the First Lady signed it. It was a great victory for kids.
And it wasn't an auto pen. What an idea, right?
It was not auto pen. We were standing there. And I just love that that's the first picture when you come into the White House. And
I also think it talks about how important this is to the White House and to the First Lady. And Melania Trump has made it pretty clear. She says out of the political stuff, this was a moral issue for her.
Yeah.
This was
protecting kids and protecting women.
And that to her was a non-political issue, which is, I think, why she's there and signing it.
Absolutely, yes. So, 4th big victory, Recissions. This past week, we passed the first Recissions. Recissions is an expedited process to cut spending. We cut $9 billion in spending. We cut a bunch of foreign aid spending, which was a good thing. We codified some of the DOGE cuts on foreign affairs. But most notably, we cut the federal funding for PBS and for NPR. Now, that is something conservatives have been fighting to do for 50 years. As long as you and I have been alive, conservatives have been fighting to cut the funding of PBS and NPR. We talked about, the president talked at dinner when we were at the White House. He said, you know what? Reagan couldn't do it. Bush couldn't do it.
And they tried, by the way. They did. I want people to understand the history of this. This is something they tried to do, couldn't get it done.
And just a week ago, we were on the Senate floor till 2:30 in the morning. I'll tell you, the reason we were there at 2:30 in the morning, the last 4 hours, there was a real chance we were not going to get the votes. It looked like the votes, it was going to go down, and we were spending 4 hours. It wasn't that we wanted to vote at 2:30 in the morning. It's that at 10 p.m., we didn't have the votes. And so we spent 4 hours trying to get the votes. We got them.
How hard is that? I just got to ask. Like when you're and you're 1 or 2 votes, I'm assuming at that point, right?
We were one vote
who they
down.
are.
There were 4 no votes. We could only afford to lose 3. And so we had to work and talk to the folks and strategize and go back and forth, and we got it done, but it was 4 hours of major uncertainty, because if it had been voted down, it would have been catastrophic. And so we avoided that. And I just want to say, and look, there's going to be more rescissions that come over. Heidi and I were sitting with Russ Vogt, who's the head of OMB, great conservative, great friend. We were telling Russ, send more. And he's like, look, this was a test case. Will Republicans in Congress stand up and actually cut spending? And we did. And for it to be PBS and NPR, I spoke on the Senate floor. We talked about this in the last podcast. And I said, listen, if you want to listen to left-wing propaganda, turn on MSNBC.
Yep.
But
they do a great job.
There's no reason, I wouldn't know, but there's no reason the taxpayer should subsidize it. And we actually got that done. I will confess, I did somewhat tongue-in-cheek ask the president if the dinner menu Friday night, if they were serving Big Bird for dinner, which some of my colleagues groaned a bit at. But look, that is a massive conservative victory. That's victory number 4.
It's a huge one. I want to take a moment and talk to you about an awesome company. Two of my good friends, Clay and Buck, they decided to start a coffee company with small batch coffee. Now, if you start your day with coffee, then you need to check out Crockett Coffee. If you haven't had it yet, then you got to try it, and I'm going to save you 20% off your first order. Now, Crockett Coffee is small batch roasted to perfection on purpose by experts who love the taste of a great cup of coffee. It's also roasted in our nation's heartland and delivered fresh to your home. Crockett Coffee also gives back. Yes, Buck Sexton and Clay Travis, my fellow Patriots, they wanted to make sure they never sold out, and they gave you coffee that you love. And look, in the coffee space, there are a lot of really liberal, woke companies, so why give them your money? Now, you can choose between fresh ground coffee, whole bean coffee, or even K-Cups if you choose. And if you're interested in mushroom coffee and the positive benefits that come with enjoying that each day, Crockett Coffee is now producing that as well. There's dark roast, a mild roast, a light roast, a decaf version. I drink that in the afternoon and the evening when I'm doing my show. And the mushroom organic blend. You choose what you like to try first, and here's the part I love. A portion of your purchase goes to support the Tunnel to Towers Foundation because the good people at Crockett Coffee also pledge to never forget. Now, let me save you money while you try a great cup of small batch coffee. CrockettCoffee.com. Use my name, Ben. You'll get 20% off your first order. That's CrockettCoffee.com. My name, Ben, and your promo code. When you put that in, you're going to save 20% off. CrockettCoffee.com. Promo code Ben, 20% off your first order. Senator, you said you had a top list here, 5. This is the big one. Yep. Number 5 is the whole meat and potatoes.
Number 5 is the one big, beautiful bill. And it's interesting. We have seen for months Democrats in the media trying to demagogue this bill, trying to spread lies about this bill, trying to fearmonger about this bill. I will tell you something the president said Friday night, and multiple of us, including me, said Friday night. This bill has the most conservative victories in it of any piece of legislation I think that has ever passed into law. I don't think that it's hyperbole. There is no other bill that has as many major conservative victories. I'm going to walk through quickly 12 of them. We're going to do this fast, but this is information you cannot get anywhere else. And this segment right now is the reason to listen to Verdict. It's the reason to share it with your friends. It's the reason to post it online. It's the reason to make sure you subscribe, because you can watch CNN all day long. God help you if you do. Your eyes will bleed. You will go insane and run around in circles. But you could watch it all day long, and you will not get this information that you're getting right now on Verdict. 12 victories that are in the one big, beautiful bill. Victory number 1. We have stopped a $4 trillion tax increase. If we did nothing, on December 31st, the Trump tax cuts would disappear, and every American taxpayer, your taxes would go up
significantly.
$4 trillion.
Yeah.
Every taxpayer. And by the way, the Democrats wanted your taxes to go up. To stop a $4 trillion tax increase is a massive victory. That's victory 1 in the one big, beautiful bill. Victory 2, we enacted new tax cuts. No tax on tips.
Yep.
That's my legislation. I drafted it. It is in this bill. That means if you're a waiter or a waitress, if you're a bartender, if you're a barber or a hairstylist, if you work at a nail salon, if you're a taxi cab driver or an Uber driver, Millions of Americans rely on tips. We're providing real and meaningful tax relief to working Americans. That's in there. No tax on overtime is in there. No tax on Social Security is in there. All three of those were President Trump's campaign promises. We delivered on all three of those. And working Americans all across Texas and all across this country will see the benefits of those major tax cuts.
That's huge. I mean, it's just huge when you think about that and you think about the promise and how it was, you look at the president. I go back to the campaign.
Yeah.
And he came out and he was in Vegas and he was like, hey, we shouldn't be taxing people. They're working their tails off in the tips and everything else. And then the left actually came out and immediately started attacking him for this, saying it'll never happen. This is not a good idea.
Yeah, they did say it'll never happen.
Yeah.
They said it's an empty promise.
Yep.
By the way, I've told the story of where he came up with the idea of no tax on tips. He was the day of his Vegas rally. He was having lunch in Vegas. He said there was a waitress who came up to him, was serving him lunch, and Trump being Trump, he told us, he said, she was beautiful. I'm telling you, she was beautiful. And he said she was saying how stressful it was to pay taxes on tips and how complicated it was. And he said he just put out a piece of paper and he wrote on the piece of paper, no tax on tips. He said, what do you think? She says, that sounds great. And he said, I had a rally that afternoon. So I went out to the rally and I said, all right, let's try it out. And he said, no tax on tips.
Place went nuts.
It went nuts. And
because it's a
saw
tip town. I mean,
yes,
it is. People make
25% of the workers in Nevada are tipped workers. And so
they rely on it as their income.
Yes, and so I saw it and I said, this is political genius, and I immediately drafted the legislation to make it happen. That is part of one big, beautiful bill. Victory 3, securing the border. We mentioned what the president has done by enforcing the law. What we put in one big, beautiful bill is $150 billion to secure the border. It is the largest investment in border security in the history of America. It will build the wall. It will complete the wall. We will hire more Border Patrol agents. We will hire more ICE agents. We will build more detention facilities. We will have more detention beds, and we will employ technology, infrared, drones, helicopters. It is, as I said, the biggest investment ever to secure the border. That is in the bill.
One of the things that you mentioned there was technology. It is amazing to see how far behind we've been on technology and how we didn't have the funding for the technology that we knew we needed. That was clearly done on purpose by the prior administration, because if you don't have the technology, then you're behind. The cartels are ahead. The human traffickers are ahead. The people are ahead of you. They held us back on purpose to, again, open the border.
Yes.
So we've been playing catch up, and that's why this money was so important in this bill.
There's another strategic victory, which is every spending bill, the Democrats hold border spending and military spending hostage.
Yep.
What we've done is funded the things that are critical to keeping this country safe, which means the Democrats can't hold it hostage anymore. So there's a tactical advantage going forward on the next budget battle, because this $150 billion, we have appropriated it. It is going out the door, and there's not a damn thing Chuck Schumer or AOC can do to stop it. That is valuable.
On the psyche aspect of it, because I do think this is one of the things that I'm witnessing a change. Our Border Patrol agents, whether it's Department of Homeland Security, ICE,
yes,
their mentality right now has got to be on a high.
It is like a drowning man about to die, given a life preserver, lifted out, saved. They're able to do their jobs. They're locking up bad
they're
guys.
Fired up. They're ready to go to war.
Human traffickers. They're stopping drug traffickers. Every time I see a Border Patrol agent or an ICE agent, to be honest, half the time we just hug. I mean, the level of they're just like, thank God.
We get to do our job.
Victory number 4. Repaying the states for border security. $13.5 billion, over $10 billion going to Texas. Texas taxpayers spent over $10 billion to secure the border because Joe Biden and the Democrats refused to do so. I helped lead the charge to repay the states. That is in there. That means Texas is getting over $10 billion paid back. That's a huge victory. Victory number 4. Victory number 5. Rebuilding the military. Over $150 billion to support our soldiers, our sailors, our airmen, our Marines, to build new submarines, to build new next-generation fighter jets, to improve our ability to stand up to China, to stand up to our enemies, to combat hypersonics, the next generation of warfare. Look, with the military, often you're fighting the last war. We're going forward. We're going to face 10,000 drone swarms using AI, investing $150 billion to make sure We can defend this nation. There's no responsibility the federal government has that is more important. And by the way, this is the money the Democrats always hold hostage. So we funded it right now. They can no longer touch this hostage because this is done.
Huge.
Victory number 6, the Coast Guard. Now, this is something I'm particularly proud of because, as you know, I'm the chairman of the Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation.
Yep.
The Coast Guard is in our jurisdiction. So I wrote the Coast Guard provision. $24 billion for the Coast Guard. This is the single largest investment in the Coast Guard in the history of the United States of America. To give you a sense of the scope of the order of magnitude, the annual budget of the Coast Guard is about $12 billion. We are spending about 200% of the annual budget on the Coast Guard in investments. And what are we doing? We're buying new ships. We're buying new helicopters. We're buying new physical infrastructure. And critically, we're investing in ice cutters, in polar ice cutters, and Arctic ice cutters. Right now, China is kicking our ass in the Arctic. And the Arctic is critical for national security. Any war ICBMs are going to come over the Arctic. The Arctic is now, you've got the United States on the Arctic, you've got China playing on the Arctic, you've got Russia playing on the Arctic, and we are losing. This funding will enable us not only to compete to win, and by the way, a huge theme of everything I do in Congress is beat China, beat China, beat China. This investment in the Coast Guard is to beat China in the Arctic. But let me tell you a huge America First benefit for this, which is shipbuilding in America has almost entirely disappeared.
Yeah, and that's scary from a national security standpoint.
It is very scary, but this Coast Guard bill will bring shipbuilding back to America. You look at Galveston, Texas.
Yeah.
There's a huge multi-billion-dollar shipyard that is being built and expanded right now to build these ice cutters. And the problem previously is if you're a private company, you couldn't make the multi-billion-dollar investment because you didn't know where demand was going to come from. Because we have $24 billion appropriated, there is a multi-year stream of buy orders coming from the Coast Guard for these ice cutters. That is going to bring back thousands of jobs, good American jobs, right here building ships to keep America safe. That is in the bill. I'll tell you, when I was in the Hill Country, when I was with the Coast Guardsmen who were rescuing Texans from the floods, every single coastie, every one of them, every man and woman knew exactly about this investment in the Coast Guard. They knew it was the biggest in history, and every one of them said, thank you. This will make a massive difference in our ability to do our job.
I've got a good friend in the Coast Guard, and he said to me the other day about this. He said, the Coast Guard, and he's been in for 20-plus years. He said, we've always gotten the hand-me-downs. We get the leftover equipment and the old equipment. That's a lot of their equipment literally come from surplus, from military and other things. He said, this is the first time that we are now like on the cutting edge on our own because of what you just described. He said, not only has morale gone through the roof, we're no longer like the forgotten agency. Like we're kind of like, the fifth wheel of military and government. He's like, now we matter, and it matters for national security as he described it. And I think that's a great point.
That is absolutely right. And by the way, the Coast Guard also does drug interdiction. It does border security.
Exactly.
The Coast Guard is critical for securing our border. And so this investment, having those Coast Guard cutters to stop drug traffickers, stop human traffickers, and also to engage in search and rescue, which is hugely important. That investment is something I care deeply about. And by the way, we're at number 6. I told you I'm going to give you 12 major conservative victories in the One Big Beautiful Bill. We're at 6. I actually want listeners to pause for a second. How many of you could list the first 6 before this podcast? And I just want to make the point. What kind of job does the corporate media do? I'm willing to bet virtually none of our listeners could have listed those first 6 because the news hasn't covered it. And it's why we do this podcast, to give you information so that when you're talking to your friends and your colleagues, you will know what's being accomplished. There's a reason President Trump is so excited about this One Big Beautiful Bill, because it is massive, massive victories for America.
Number 7, spectrum. Now, spectrum, what is spectrum? Electromagnetic spectrum. It is how we communicate. It's how our cell phones work. It's how Wi-Fi works. It's how satellites work. It's how streaming works. It's all of electronics. Spectrum, the largest holder of spectrum is the United States government. The United States government has vast swaths of spectrum. And under Joe Biden, the United States government stopped
making new spectrum available to the private sector. They ended auction authority. It was grotesquely irresponsible. It did massive damage to America. It destroyed jobs in America, and it let China get ahead of America. In this bill, I wrote the legislation that directs the federal government to auction to the private sector 800 megahertz of spectrum for private sector investment. What does that mean? Number one, that will generate in excess of $100 billion of revenue to the federal government.
Wow.
Real money. Now, even in government terms, $100 billion is real money. And listen, you and I are deeply concerned about the deficit and the debt. The entire commerce title that I wrote that had historic investments in Coast Guard and a bunch of other things, I ended up saving over $40 billion, reducing the deficit and the debt by over $40 billion. And the driver was because of Spectrum Auction Authority, we will bring in $100 billion to pay down the debt.
That's incredible.
That's real money, but it's not the biggest piece of this. The biggest piece of this is by auctioning this spectrum off, we will open up billions and billions of dollars of private sector investment. The companies that buy this spectrum are going to invest. It is going to create hundreds of thousands of jobs. That is not an exaggeration. Hundreds of thousands of jobs. And you know what spectrum is all about? Beating China to 6G. I mentioned my consistent theme, beat China. Beat China in the Arctic with the Coast Guard, beat China to 6G with spectrum. And I got to tell you, 3 months ago, there was nobody in Washington who thought we could get this done. I sat in the office of the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, a good friend of mine. I said, Mike, we're going to do spectrum on the One Big Beautiful Bill. And Mike laughed in my face. He's a good friend, but
he's like, there's no way.
He said, there's no chance because the Department of Defense and the CIA will fight you. They will stop you. You cannot get it done. We not only got it done when I cut the deal and got it in the bill, President Trump called me the next morning. He said, Ted, this is incredible. This is like, how did you get such an incredible deal? Historic Spectrum Auction Authority producing hundreds of thousands of jobs and beating China to 6G. That's in the bill. Number 8, air traffic control. This bill invests $12.5 billion modernizing our air traffic control to keep your family safer when you fly, to keep my family safer when we fly, to stop using outdated radars, to stop using computers that have floppy disks and little
copper
slips
wire.
of paper. Copper wire, to modernize our air traffic control, a massive investment in keeping the American public safe. This bill, I wrote that portion. That is also in the commerce title, so I wrote that portion that will fund and improve air traffic control, a huge victory. Number 9, space.
Yep.
This bill has $10 billion for NASA to go to the moon, for the Artemis program, for the Gateway program, to beat China to the moon. China has said they intend to return to the moon by 2030. In my view, if we lose the moon to China, it would be a catastrophic loss. It would be a loss if we woke up in a few years and China was on the moon and China established a base on the moon, which is what they said they intend to do with the Russians.
And they made that very clear. That is the sole intent of going. It's not just to go to the moon. It's to have a base on the moon.
Yes. If they did that and we lost, I think it would be worse than Sputnik, that it would be a national body blow that would crush this country. And look, the moon is critical. Number one, for national security. The moon is the high ground. You look at so much of our national security and so much of our commerce depends on satellites in orbit around the Earth. The moon gives you the high ground. It is very dangerous for us to cede that to China. It is unacceptable for us to cede that to China. But number 2, there are massive rare earth minerals on the moon. There are enormous economic advantages. It is current U.S. law that it is the policy of the American government to have a sustained human habitation either on the lunar surface or in cislunar orbit. This investment in beating China to the moon, and by the way, the moon is a stepping stone to Mars. We will go to Mars, but we haven't landed on a celestial body in over 50 years, so we're going to land on the moon first to make sure we know how to do it, and then we're going to go to Mars. This investment, I wrote this investment in there. I will say there was significant resistance. And without getting too much into the sausage making, we won against the resistance. This is in there. It is a massive investment.
And China is going to notice this as well, yeah.
That is exactly right. That's number 9. Number 10, CAFE standards. The standards that mandate you keep having to have higher and higher fuel efficiency on your cars. That's what the Biden administration has used as its tool, as one of its tools, to wage the war on the internal combustion engine, to try to force every car to be electric, is they keep jacking up CAFE standards higher and higher and higher. What does that mean? Number one, it drives up the cost of your cars. You notice cars have gotten a lot more expensive. Trucks have gotten a lot more expensive. Number two, it makes cars less safe. Because one of the ways you get the gas efficiency higher is you replace metal with plastics. You get cheap
make it lighter.
Cheap plastic that crumbles in a crash and more people die. In the commerce section of the One Big Beautiful Bill, you know what we did to CAFE standards?
What was that?
Zeroed them out.
Really?
They're gone. So it's actually, and this
so you're telling me that my car, instead of being all plastic where you have a little fender bender and everything breaks, they could actually go back and say, hey, we're not trying to save weight here. We're trying to actually make safe cars again.
It can be a great American car again, made of steel, tough as hell. And by the way, you want to buy an electric car? Great. That's your choice.
Yeah,
you want to buy a hybrid? Great. You want to buy a gas car? Great. It ought to be consumers choosing. And actually, the way we did this, we very much modeled how in 2017 we repealed the individual mandate on Obamacare. So that was a fight I led in 2017, the individual mandate. The way we eliminated it is under the rules of reconciliation, we could not eliminate the legal mandate to buy health insurance, which was the individual mandate under Obamacare. So you know what we did? We made the penalty zero. So you used to be the IRS finds you. If you didn't buy health insurance, the IRS would fine you. It is still the law. You're required to buy health insurance. And if you don't, you will be fined $0.00. We did the same thing to CAFE standards. So they can put their standards out, but the penalty for violating it is zero. And I want to mention, look, this is, again, like PBS and NPR, this has been a conservative battle for 50 years.
And Democrats have been winning for 50 years, unfortunately.
And we got this done. I wrote this portion. It is in the bill. It is zeroed out. And we got this done. And I'm willing to bet fewer than 1% of our listeners even knew we had done it because we won so many victories that this falls all the way down to number 10 on the list.
Incredible. Well done.
The final two.
Yep.
The final two, as you know, are very near and dear to my heart. Number 11 is school choice. In this bill, we passed the single largest and most consequential federal school choice bill in the history of our country. I wrote this provision. Every single American taxpayer can now contribute up to $1,700 a year to a scholarship granting organization in the states and get a dollar-for-dollar credit on their taxes. It means the money is free.
Yeah.
The effect of this is going to be tens of billions of new scholarship money in the states for school choice, for K through 12 school choice. We're going to do a subsequent pod that does a really deep dive because
this is part of your legacy, by the way. This is going to be part of your legacy.
This is the issue I care more about than anything else. I have spent 30 years fighting for it, and we're going to do another pod where we do a very deep dive because there's some aspects of this that I want the listeners to appreciate that are both incredible policy victories, but also massive political victories. We are creating incentives to turn blue states red, to build constituencies of parents and kids who want fantastic education. This is, I told the president, if and when we get this done, you will go down in history as one of the greatest civil rights presidents in our nation's history. Your critics will never acknowledge that.
Yeah, but the reality will be you're going to change poor communities.
The reality is the school choice provision is massive, and it's in the bill. And then the final number 12 are the Trump accounts, the Invest America accounts. Again, I wrote this provision.
This could fundamentally change this country, by the way.
Starting next year, July 4th of next year, the 250th anniversary of the United States of America. Every child in America will have a personal investment account. Every newborn child will have it seeded with $1,000. Parents, family, employers can contribute up to $5,000 a year in a tax-advantaged account. All of that money is invested in the S&P 500, is invested in the stock market. That enables every kid to enjoy the incredible benefits of compound growth, which will transform our kids. The wealth creation for the next generation of Americans will be utterly transformative. And not only that, this creates a new generation of capitalists, as our kids will all be owners of the largest employers in America. These two victories, school choice and personal investment accounts for kids, without exaggeration, Ben, and I've told the president this, I think 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now, these will be the two things everyone remembers from this bill. Everything else I listed, 1 through 10, which are massive.
Yeah.
They are conservative victories for the generations. I think 11 and 12 will dwarf 1 and 10 because the difference, we will see trillions of dollars invested in 401ks for kids, in these Trump accounts that will change the future of every one of our kids and make them all have skin in the game in our capitalist society. And school choice is going to literally provide hope and opportunity to millions of kids. We got both of them done. Those are victories, generational victories. And when the president signed it on July 4th, they were victories for all of America.
I hope you share this one. This is one of those shows I love that we've done. You get all this information. We give it to you. Share it wherever you can. If you're watching on YouTube, share it there. On social media, if you're watching on Facebook, share it there. If you're on X, share it there. Share it with your family and your friends. This is big victories and a long list of what has happened since Donald Trump was inaugurated January the 20th. 6-month checkup. I'd say we're doing pretty darn well right now. Don't forget to hit that subscribe or auto download button wherever you get this podcast as well so you don't miss a single episode. And then Senator and I will see you back here on Wednesday morning.